Hello there, and welcome to the Net Report podcast. Today, we are going to be going over both myself and Chris's NBA All-Star selection team, both the starters, reserves, and wild card. And we're even going to throw you a bone and give you our injury reserve. Let's just kick right into it. Chris, give us your East starters.
Yeah, this one felt like I don't want to say no-brainer. There was one that I had a little bit of issues with, but for my guard number one spot, I had Tyrese Halliburton. I felt like that was pretty much a lock. Shouldn't be much argument here. That offense has been insane. They're the best offense in the league, and he's the driving engine on that team. Really, no debate here. Guard number two is where it gets a little spicy. There's been a couple back and forth. We even saw it with the actual starters that were announced. But I have Jalen Brunson in the spot. I think he's been incredible, and it really came down to him and one other person. But I think Brunson had better shooting splits, and he's really just been the engine on that Knicks team. He's been incredible this season. For front court number one, I have Jason Tatum, he's the best player on the best team. I feel there's no more explanation really needed there. He's been incredible, and the Celtics have been incredible, so he definitely deserved the starting spot. Giannis Antetokounmpo, really no explanation here. He's one of the best players in the world on the second best team in the East, and it's Giannis. Giannis is just incredible. And front court number three, the leading candidate for MVP right now, Joel Embiid, who's also just been completely incredible. So those are my Eastern Conference starters, and I'd like to hear yours now.
So this will be the only time in this show that we have the exact same. I promise you going forward, I can almost guarantee it that we will not have the same. But yeah, I mean, my backcourts also included Halliburton and Brunson. It really came down to Brunson versus someone else. And that's a change from who was actually selected as the starters, but I just feel that Brunson is more crucial to the team that he is on, and I feel like he plays more of a role to their success, at least in the regular season. He has completely blossomed from what he was in Dallas, and Mark Cuban will rue the day he let him slip through his fingers. And then, yeah, I mean, Joel Embiid, Giannis, and Jason Tatum, I mean, those are just genuine no-brainers. They were about as locks as you can get for the All-Star game. Outside of injury, they were always going to be your front court. There
Most
really is no
definitely.
explanation needed for that. I will then kick it off to you real quick for your West starters, because we'll have some disagreements in this category.
All right, so for my Western Conference starters, I actually kept it the same as the NBA had it. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for guard number one, Luka Doncic for guard number two. They've just both been incredible. Shai honestly has turned this Thunder team around. They've turned the whole team around, and he's been the driving force of that. Luka's just been incredible. Top 3 or 4 MVP candidate. He's always amazing. In the front court, I have LeBron James, it's LeBron James. He's been incredible. I mean, he's not the reason his team hasn't been as amazing, but LeBron James, 20th All-Star appearance, I felt like it's pretty much a no-brainer here. Kevin Durant, another one. He's been incredible, even in his advanced age. I felt wrong not to give him a starting spot. And the biggest lock in this front court spot, Nikola Jokic. If Embiid's number one, Jokic is number two for MVP race, and Jokic is, that's debatable, but Jokic has been incredible, and he definitely deserves that front court spot as a lock.
100% agree. Shai Gilgeous and Luka, my two for the guard position. There's really no argument there. Luka, MVP candidate, playing otherworldly as he does every night. Shai Gilgeous, same thing. He also is playing otherworldly and also an MVP candidate, if you ask me. There are 3 MVP candidates on this starting West team for me, including Jokic as well, which is kind of just bonkers. But yeah, I also, for my front court, have Nikola Jokic, no argument. Kevin Durant, no argument. And I'm going to throw Kawhi Leonard in there as my other front court.
Okay.
I think that LeBron is getting the LeBron effect, which, I mean, fair. He, of course, was the most voted player, so he automatically gets in.
But it's your ballot.
Think it's my ballot, and you just said it. LeBron is not the reason his team is as bad as it is or as mid as it is. However, Kawhi is a immense reason why his team is as good as they are. 1 game out of first place, introduced a whole new star to the team, and a lot of it has to do with Ty Lue. But what I'll say about Kawhi is, this is the first time we've seen him healthy in years. And it looks like Kawhi of old. It looks like Spurs Kawhi. His defense is back to what it used to be. He probably will end up being all NBA defense, and his shooting splits are amazing. He's on the verge of a 40, 50, 90 season, and I just think that little bit edges him into the starting group compared to LeBron. Like this Clippers team has really emerged, and he is the key cog in all of that fitting together. As much as Paul George and James Harden and Ty Lue are great pieces to have in there, Kawhi Leonard is the driving force of this team. And while I agree that LeBron is also a driving force of his team, between the shooting splits and the effect that they currently are having on their team, I just think that Kawhi is having the overall better season.
I will say this. I don't think that's as controversial as many will probably think. It definitely will get some hate, but I don't think that's as controversial. I don't hate that. But yeah, we'll kick it off to Eastern Conference reserves now, and I'll let you go over yours first.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
for my East reserves for my guard position, I have Damian Lillard and Donovan Mitchell. Damian Lillard's going to get kicked from the starting team as he will start regularly. That's how he was voted. But I think he's going to be reserve in my ballot. And Donovan Mitchell as well. I mean, really no brainers in my personal opinion. Dame is still Dame. He's obviously not playing with an actual all-star for once, so his volume has been limited, but he's still doing his same old stuff. I mean, he's out of his mind crazy shooting most nights. And Donovan Mitchell is just a force to be reckoned with on that Cavs team. They're underperforming, but not because of him. A lot of key injuries on that team, and I just think that it would be a crime to keep Donovan Mitchell off of a all-star team. Onto our East reserves front court, I've got Julius Randle. I mean, outside of Jalen Brunson, he's the other offensive cog in that Knicks team. Then I have Bam Adebayo, who is both the offensive and defensive cog in that Heat team. He kind of just does it all for you. The one thing that I will say a knock against Bam, he has a knack of every now and then kind of just disappearing. He'll still be there on defense, but on offense he will disappear. But I still think his stats, I mean, he's most nights good for a double-double, and he's just defensively a nightmare. And this is compared to last year, the Heat are kind of taking the regular season a little more seriously. Still missing games every now and then, the entire team, but they seem to be overall meshing better together, and that they're not too far out of a good playoff position spot. And then for my third one, Jaylen Brown, I would arguably say he's having his best season to date. It's probably getting overshadowed by the overall success of the team, and now it's just 2 or 3 years in a row of Jaylen Brown really blossoming. But I think from a defensive standpoint, passing, rebounding, shooting, decision making, this has been Jaylen Brown's best season. And I mean, we've seen what he can do. It's going to matter what he does in the playoffs more so than anything. But in the regular season, he's the perfect 2A guy to go next to Jason Tatum, and he's playing out of his mind right now. And so for my East wildcard positions, what I will say is for the players that I left off, there are all very good reasons, and you and I can discourse those. But I decided that the two most deserving players for the East wildcard positions were Tyrese Maxey. He's more than likely going to win Most Improved Player of the Year, just to be very honest. He is lights out. After losing their number 2 in James Harden, Maxey has solidified himself as the team's number 2. Everyone was concerned going into the season, well, you're trading James Harden and you're kind of just getting a bunch of role playerish pieces who, like, how is this offense going to look? And they're better for it. Like, now, in the playoffs, will they be better for it? We'll see. But as far as Tyrese Maxey is concerned, he has made that team better. He is out of his mind playing great ball right now. And it helps playing ball next to Embiid. But I have him and Derek White as my All-Star East wildcard players. For Derek White, why he's going to get in over... He is my last selection as well. The last man to make the team. And why he gets over other players is... I think the stats in the box score will not tell the story to which what Derek White brings to the Celtics team. They're the number 1 team in the entire NBA, and a lot of it is to do with him. This team lost some big hitters. Marcus Smart, namely chief one of them. What Derek White has brought to this team is playmaking. He's shooting great. He does a lot on the defense that I don't think people really notice, but he is, if not the best, the second best blocking guard in the entire NBA. Nobody blocks shots better than he does. And he's just always involved in a play. He's very scrappy, and he's just elevated his game year by year since he's gotten to the Celtics. I know it's not the sexiest pick, and it is going to be highly controversial for who I've left off, but I just think that when you look at it, the NBA's best team, yes, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they're obviously there. I just think it would be a war crime to leave off Derek White, who has been arguably as important to this team's success. That's gonna round out my East All-Star team.
Yeah, definitely a couple different picks here, but I'll start with my East reserves now. For the 2 guard positions, I have Donovan Mitchell and Damian Lillard. I felt like pretty much the same as you. I felt these 2 were locks. Both have been incredible. Donovan Mitchell, the driving force of that Cleveland team. Lillard, second best player on an amazing Bucks team. And he's Damian Lillard. I feel like there's not much. I don't have to defend them much here, I feel like. As for the front court, we definitely differed a little bit here. For my first one, I had Julius Randle, who I felt is having just an incredible season. He's after those first 8 games where he really struggled, he's been all NBA caliber, and this Knicks team has been very good, and he definitely deserves his flowers there. For my second front court player, I have Bam Adebayo. He's I know this will get some hate just because like a lot of people are going to put Jimmy over him. I feel Bam's been the best player on the Heat. He's been, I know you mentioned earlier he has some nights where it feels like he disappears, but he's definitely been the most consistent player on this Heat team, and I feel like it'd be a crime not to have him included. And for my front court number 3 spot, there's going to be some home cooking here, but I picked Paolo Banchero, and I feel it's a little bit harder because if you had asked me way earlier in the season, I would have said for sure he was a lock. Now it's a little bit controversial, but I just think he's been incredible. He's been the driving force on that Orlando offense. They're a top 8 seed. They've surprised people even with them falling off recently. He's been their most consistent player, and he's been on just a completely injury-riddled team, and he's willed them to many victories. There's been games where he's had game winners. He's had to absolutely carry the offense. I just think he deserves to get in this third front court spot. So I'll move on to my wild card spots now, and this one was really tough. Just like you said, there's so many players you could go with here. Wildcard 1, I picked Tyrese Maxey. I think he's been incredible. He's truly become that second star Philly needed next to Joel Embiid after James Harden left. And he's probably the leading candidate for most improved player. He definitely deserves an all-star spot, and I think this will be his first all-star appearance. And for wildcard number 2, I had to keep you waiting. I had to scare you a little bit. Jaylen Brown. I think Jaylen Brown definitely deserves a spot. Second best player on the best team. He's been incredible, and yeah, that's my wildcard 2 spot. I think he's been great, and yeah, those are my picks for the Eastern Conference reserves.
Chris, we almost had a problem there.
I had to scare you a little bit. I had to keep you waiting.
I almost cut you off and said, wait, you know Jaylen Brown is a front court player, correct? And then I'm like, well, he already chose Maxey, so I'm like, he better say Brown or we're going to have an immense problem. Okay, well, we'll start with your controversial take, and then we can maybe move on to mine. I considered Paolo. Don't get me wrong. His shooting splits are maybe not what I want them to be considered an all-star. They are a little lackluster. They're not bad. They're not great either, but they're good. I agree he is a driving force of that offense, and we're going to say driving force a lot today. If the Magic had continued to play as well as they were, I would maybe put him in here, but they've really fallen off these past few weeks, if not past month and a half, and it just is a little discouraging. I just don't think he's at that level just yet. I would like to see him do some more on the playmaking side, kind of understand how he can, kind of similar to how Jason Tatum and him are kind of not the same, but also kind of the same, in the regard that once Paolo understands and recognizes he doesn't have to settle for the shot, he can just drive in and dominate the paint and kind of flex his muscles and kind of draw those fouls. That's when he's going to really take that next step. Not to say that he hasn't this year. He's really elevated his game. Really elevated it. There's no spot for him on my team. Is unfortunate. Like, it would come down to taking out Derek White, and I just don't think that it's as deserving. I will say that my one Eastern Conference injury reserve is going to be someone that is somewhat controversial that we left off, both of us actually. I'm going to put Trae Young in there as my injury reserve, and why I will say I left him off personally solely because the Hawks are awful. They're terrible. They're bad. However, Trae Young has had a sneaky good season in the fact that he's shooting relatively efficiently. Like, his true shooting percentage is very, very, very efficient. It's just, I have a hard time putting a player in the All-Star game when their team is genuinely bad.
Mhm.
Not because of injuries, in all honesty, they're just bad. And him being the star player of that team, I just don't see him being rewarded for it. I'll read off a couple other names of why I left him off. Jimmy Butler, we mentioned, or Chris at least mentioned earlier. I personally left him off my list because of injuries and because I just don't think he's had the effect that he will have an effect come playoff time. I just don't think he's the same player in the regular season. I don't think he or him care as much, and he's only played 68% of his games to this point, and so just for that alone, I don't think that he deserves the nomination. I also personally left off Paolo, of course, and then I didn't put on Pascal or Scotty. I've been impressed with them, but not enough to say that, hey, they're a top 12 player in the Eastern Conference.
Mm-hmm. And as for controversial picks for yours, I feel like Derek White's probably the only like super controversial one. And what it comes down to for me is just Derek White's been incredible this year, don't get me wrong. I just have a hard time, especially when it comes to third options on really good teams. I just have a hard time when you have someone like Paolo, someone like Trae Young, someone like Scotty Barnes, who is the number one option to their team and is usually having to carry a very lackluster squad. It's very hard for me to put someone who's the third option on a very good team in front of them, just because I feel like Derek White's in a much better situation, and it's tough when you see Paolo having to carry the Magic every night. You see Trae Young trying desperately to carry this miserable Hawks team. Usually I'm going to err to the side of, hey, let's give it to this guy whose team may be a little bit worse, but he's carrying more offensively. That's personally how I typically tend to do my ballot, so that's ultimately why I went with Paolo over Derek White, but I get your rationale.
So what I will say is Derek White is the fourth, if not fifth.
Fourth or fifth, exactly. I said third, but you get the concept there.
That's kind of why I err on the side of he deserves it, because it's not even his scoring. He's averaging 16 points as a fourth or fifth option, which is incredible, by the way. It's more so everything else he does. He helps facilitate with Drew Holiday. He's gonna be an all NBA defensive player. Like, he is that good defensively. I just don't think people realize what he does in the game. Like, the game sometimes, like, as much as it goes through Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, it's helped and facilitated by him. And I know I'm the homer for saying this. I obviously watch a lot of Celtics games. I also will say this little tidbit. Trae Young and Paolo Banchero will be all-stars again. That's just a reality of it. This might be Derek White's only shot, so I'm gonna err on that bad logic.
You're erring with
and
a little bit.
I am man enough to say that I will cook from the whole team, and that might be bad logic, but sue me.
All right, we'll move over to our Western Conference reserves now. I'll take lead first here. I'll start with my
I just want to say, this was the hardest part of this entire activity for me.
Yes.
Was the Western reserves. I'll say it now. I did not put Sengun on my All-Star team, and I tried desperately to find a spot for him. It made me cry not to put him on there, but this was hard. This was genuinely difficult. Now lead us in, Chris.
But yeah, I'll start with my Western reserves now. For the two guard spots, I have Anthony Edwards and De'Aaron Fox. Both have just been incredible. Anthony Edwards, best player on the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. That Timberwolves team has been incredible, and he's been incredible. He's having the best season of his career. Really, no debate here. De'Aaron Fox, king of the fourth quarter, just incredible. One thing that's really, it's being talked about a little bit, but not hammered home as much as it should be. He's really improved from three-point range. He's taking a lot more threes this season and converting a lot more of them. He's been incredible. He definitely deserves this all-star spot. As for the front court, I went with Anthony Davis for my first front court player. He's been incredible as well. Definitely, honestly, at times the Lakers' best player. I know that feels weird to say with LeBron, but he's been probably for at least I'd say a good half of the season there. He's felt like their number one option for more than half the season, and he's just truly been incredible. When he's on, he's on. That's just the problem with Anthony Davis. He's not always
I'm gonna pause here
on.
real quick.
Yes.
When the Lakers run their offense through Anthony Davis,
Mm-hmm.
they are the best Lakers they can be.
Yes.
As
Mm-hmm.
dominant as LeBron is, when the Lakers run their offensive scheme and AD is cooking, you can't stop them.
Definitely.
I agree. AD, and let me underscore something. He's been healthy
Yes.
all season.
Finally.
All season, he's been healthy.
But for my second front court spot, I went with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi and that Clippers team, just an incredible season so far. They really were having it rough for a while once they traded for James Harden. They went on that big losing streak, but they've completely flipped this season around, and Kawhi's been the best player on that team. He's been incredible. He's another guy who's finally having a healthy season, and he definitely deserves an all-star nod here. Really no argument here. And this was probably the toughest. The third front court spot was probably the toughest one to pick out of everything. This one's going to be kind of controversial, but I went with Karl Anthony Towns. And what it really came down
No, you didn't.
I
didn't even put him in my honorable mentions. There's no way you did that.
Karl Anthony Towns. And what it came down to for me is he's the second best player on the best team in the West, and he's been incredible this season. There's so many players that it's so close when it comes to a lot of guys, but I just could not pick them over Karl Anthony Towns. It was a last second decision, I will say that.
Who are your reserves? I'm mad at you.
For my wild card spots, I had Steph Curry as wild card number 1. No brainer here. Definitely deserves it. It was hard not putting him in the other guard spots, but he definitely deserves to be on the All-Star team. He's been incredible. That Warriors team hasn't been, but he's been incredible. And Devin Booker's is my second wild card spot. Felt these two were no-brainers. Couldn't fit them in the guard spots, but they definitely deserve to be on the All-Star team. As for my injury designation player, I went with Paul George. It was between him and Cat for me. They were the two I was fighting back and forth with, and I ultimately ended up going with Karl Anthony Towns. And for snubs, I mean, we got Sabonis and Goon. Alright, but I'll push it over to you, and I'll let you introduce who you had on your All-Star Reserve team.
My West guards are Curry, because, come on, Chris. Fox over Curry, bro?
Yes!
What are you
Look at the
smoking?
stats, look at the stats, and tell me you can't tell me you're gonna put Curry over Fox. Look at the stats, look at the shooting splits, come on.
Steph Curry and Anthony Edwards are my West guards.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Davis obviously is my West forward. I'm not a degenerate, so I put LeBron on there as well. And Sabonis is the other forward, not anyone else. Sabonis leads the league in rebounds, just so we're all aware.
Mm-hmm.
Sabonis didn't drop a 60-plus game and lose his game, by the way.
I mean, hey,
Just
that's...
saying.
You can't win them all, man. He didn't drop a 60-point game in general, so...
Because he's the better player. He knows how to grab the board and distribute it.
Okay.
For my West wild card, I also have Devin Booker. It would just be a crime not to put him on here. What Devin Booker has done this season, with a very condensed roster, that doesn't have a point guard in all honesty, is he's become the primary on-ball ball handler for this team. And it's worked. He did it while Bradley Beal was out and while Kevin Durant was cycling through injuries, and he's done it since. They're going to make the playoffs in some fashion. It's going to be interesting to see what seed, but I just think Devin Booker's just playing out of his mind from the playmaking standpoint, and he's also shooting crazy.
Mm-hmm.
For the other wild card spot, I have Paul George. It was very difficult, and it really came down between him and my injury reserve player, who is going to be De'Aaron Fox.
Ooh.
I struggled with this one. I just think that when we look at which team has had the bigger impact from their players, while I agree the Kings are great, they've kind of taken a step down from last year, and that's only because the West is that much tougher. But the Clippers have prevailed through that. So I feel like on that alone, I have to put Paul George on here. And again, a healthy Paul George working very well in tandem with Kawhi. We've seen them healthy together for the first time since the COVID year, to be very honest with you. Since the bubble, this is the first time we've seen them healthy next to each other, like consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I left off Sengun. It hurt
It hurt me too.
a lot. It
If it
hurt a
makes you
lot.
feel better, I had him over Cat initially, but I switched up last second. It was him,
I had him
Cat,
over
and Paul George.
I had him over Paul George initially, and then I thought about it, and I'm just like, man, they're almost the 1 seed. There's just no way I can leave Paul George off. Like, they're one game out of being the 1 seed in a tough Western Conference. And the other one that I really struggle with is going to be Lauri Markkanen. Similar to why I left him off is going to be similar to why I left Jimmy Butler off. 67% game he's played. I think he's playing amazing. He's shooting crazy. I just, it's the usage and how little he's played comparatively to everyone else. I'm going to ding him on that. It's not fair, but it's my line of thinking. And yeah, those are our all-star teams. I'm sure every one of you agree with everything we said.
Yeah,
Specifically LeBron not starting.
There's not one single
I don't
controversial take.
No, I don't think anyone's going to disagree with LeBron not starting. But yes, please like, subscribe, and comment in the video below. We would appreciate all the love we've gotten on our last NBA video, so please show that same love on this video. You can find me, Jacob Kelly, on X/Twitter at JacobKellyUSF. I am the long-lost son of James Young, so please, please, please show us the support. This is my co-host, Christopher Rodriguez.
You can find me on Twitter at C_Rod223. Thank you for tuning in. Hit that like and subscribe button. And let us know your all-star ballots down below. Let us know what you agree with. Let us know what you disagree with.
Thank you for listening to the Net Report. Have a great day.